We had all great fun to run up down this road here. But if we went too far, we went fishing one day.
The History Channel's hit series Mountain Men has always been about survival, isolation, danger, and man versus nature. But what fans didn't expect was that something darker would emerge behind the cameras. Just recently, reports broke that production was suddenly halted after a chilling discovery deep in the wilderness. Crews packed up equipment overnight, and cast members were told to stay silent. Whatever they found, it wasn't part of the script, and insiders say it left everyone shaken. Viewers have been asking, what could possibly terrify the people who've stared down grizzly bears and blizzards? The answer is far worse than anyone imagined. It started like any other shoot, deep in the unforgiving American wilderness. The Mountain Men crew was filming in a remote region of Montana, documenting one of the toughest winters the show had ever faced. But then, small, unexplainable things began to happen. Camera batteries drained in minutes. Wildlife that usually avoided humans suddenly vanished from sight, and the radio equipment picked up strange static noises late into the night. One of the producers even joked that the forest felt alive. Soon, the joke stopped being funny. A veteran trapper, known for his fearlessness, refused to go back to a particular site after hearing what he described as a low groan beneath the ground. At first, the team thought it was permafrost shifting, until they found the area disturbed the next morning, as if something had clawed its way out. The discovery of fresh claw marks on nearby trees, spaced far too wide for any known predator, sent shockwaves through the crew. Still, production pressed on, unaware that what they were about to uncover would change everything. The producers decided to set up night vision cameras, hoping to capture footage of whatever was scaring the wildlife away. But when they checked the footage the next morning, the screen was filled with static, except for one frame, a dark, humanoid shape, standing just at the edge of the forest, motionless, watching. The crew laughed it off, thinking it was a shadow, a trick of the light. But that night, something began moving through their camp, and the sound of heavy footsteps in the snow proved it wasn't their imagination. Determined to prove it was just an animal, the Mountain Men crew set out at dawn, following the strange tracks leading away from camp. The snow had been freshly disturbed, and the trail looked unlike anything they'd seen before. The prints were massive, not paw-shaped, not human, but something in between, like deep impressions from a creature that shouldn't exist. As they followed the tracks deeper into the forest, the crew stumbled upon an area where the earth had collapsed inward, forming a crude pit. Inside, tangled roots jutted out from the frozen soil, and something metallic glimmered beneath the surface. At first, they thought it was an old mining shaft, maybe an abandoned prospector's tunnel. But when one of the cameramen reached down with a metal pole, he hit something solid. They started digging carefully with shovels, scraping away ice until they revealed a corroded hatch, half buried and bolted shut. The structure looked military, heavy rivets, reinforced seams, no markings. The trapper who discovered it warned them to leave it alone, saying the land had been off-limits for generations. But the producer wanted the footage. This was reality TV gold, so they kept filming as the crew pried the hatch open. The moment it cracked, a foul stench escaped, like decayed metal and wet earth. Inside was a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The lights from their headlamps flickered as they descended, and the air felt thick, almost electric. The walls were lined with rusted metal panels, and strange symbols were etched into them. Not letters, but markings that looked burned into the surface. One cameraman began coughing violently, complaining about the smell, but the rest pressed on. At the bottom of the staircase, they found what appeared to be a sealed room. The door had a faded warning stenciled across it. "Do not enter. Property of U.S. Army." Everyone froze. No one had mentioned anything about a military site in the area. That's when one of the producers made the fateful call. "Keep rolling. We're opening it." None of them could have guessed what was waiting beyond that door, or how it would bring Mountain Men to an immediate and terrifying end. When the door finally gave way, The sound echoed like a cannon through the underground tunnel. The beam from the producer's flashlight cut into the darkness, revealing a small, claustrophobic room filled with old, dust-covered crates. Each one was stenciled with strange serial numbers and the same faded insignia: the United States Army. The air was heavy with decay, and the smell of oil and rust hung thick. Inside one crate, they found stacks of brittle documents, sealed in wax paper and stamped classified. Another contained what looked like chunks of strange, blackened rock, but it wasn't rock at all. It pulsed faintly, as though alive. One of the crew members joked that it was radioactive, but no one laughed this time. When a cameraman touched it with the tip of his boot, his headlamp flickered, and a cold vibration filled the air. Then came the sound, a metallic thud from deeper within the chamber, rhythmic, almost like breathing. The team froze. They scanned the room and saw a second door at the far end, partially blocked by debris. It wasn't locked, but it looked as though someone, or something, had tried to keep it sealed from the inside. The producer insisted they capture everything, even as the trapper warned them to stop. "There are things buried for a reason," he muttered. But curiosity won. As they cleared the debris, a gust of air rushed out that extinguished their lights for a moment. When they came back on, the cameraman closest to the door let out a scream. On the other side was a chamber lined with glass cylinders, each about 7 feet tall, filled with a dark liquid. Floating inside were shapes. Humanoid, distorted, unrecognizable. Limbs that bent wrong, faces blurred by time and decomposition. One had military dog tags suspended in the liquid. The tag read, "Carter, J.W." The realization hit. These weren't mannequins. They were human. Someone had been conducting experiments here, and whatever they were trying to contain had been buried for decades. One of the cameras suddenly went black, the feed cutting to static. The audio picked up a faint, gurgling sound. That was enough. The producer shouted for everyone to leave, but by then, something started moving inside one of the tanks. The sound that came from the tank didn't belong in this world. It was a wet, metallic screech, followed by a low vibration that rattled the metal flooring beneath their boots. The liquid inside began to bubble violently, as if something submerged within was struggling to break free. One of the cameramen yelled that his equipment was glitching. The footage turned white, then red, before cutting out entirely. The others bolted for the stairs, but the producer stayed, whispering, "Keep filming. This could make history." A loud crack split the air, and the glass shattered outward. The stench that followed was unbearable. Thick black fluid splattered across the walls, coating everything. Out of the cloud of vapor, a figure slumped forward, a human silhouette. But wrong. The body was bloated and twisted, with skin that looked like it had been melted and reformed. Its eyes were open, but clouded white. It gasped once, as if breathing after years underwater, then collapsed onto the floor. The trapper, terrified, fired his hunting rifle out of instinct. The echo was deafening in the narrow chamber. When the smoke cleared, the figure was gone. Just gone. The producer shouted for everyone to move, but the exit lights were flickering uncontrollably. They could hear dragging sounds coming from behind them, like something crawling along the walls. As they sprinted toward the staircase, one crew member slipped on the wet floor and screamed. Something had grabbed his leg. The others pulled him free, but when they reached daylight, his boot was gone, and deep scratch marks ran up his calf. The moment they surfaced, everyone panicked. The cameraman vomited in the snow. The producer ordered the tapes to be secured immediately, saying no one could talk about what they'd seen. That night, the crew stayed silent around the campfire, listening to distant howls echoing from the pit they'd opened. But the next morning, they found something that made them realize it wasn't over. The hatch they'd sealed shut was wide open again, and the footprints leading away from it weren't theirs. By sunrise, the entire Mountain Men camp was in chaos. No one slept. The hatch that had been welded shut was gaping open, the snow around it trampled by dozens of prints that didn't match any wildlife or boot pattern. Some were human-sized, others far larger, and all of them led toward the tree line before vanishing into the untouched forest. The producer immediately radioed the network office, insisting they send help. Within hours, 2 black SUVs appeared on the remote access road, something that shouldn't have been possible given the blizzard warnings in effect. Out stepped men in unmarked winter gear, carrying sealed cases. They didn't introduce themselves, didn't ask questions. They simply demanded that all footage, tapes, and hard drives be turned over for review. When one of the cameramen hesitated, one of the strangers flashed a badge that had no agency name, only an eagle insignia and a number. He said flatly, "This location is now under federal containment." The crew was ordered to pack up and leave the site immediately. The trapper refused. He said he wasn't leaving his land to whatever those things were. That's when one of the men approached him quietly, leaned close, and said something no one else heard. Whatever it was, the trapper went pale and began to gather his things without another word. The producers were furious. They'd been shut down without explanation, and the show's future was suddenly in jeopardy. Still, as they drove away from the site, each of them noticed something strange. The GPS trackers and cell signals in the area all cut off at the same spot, as if they'd entered a dead zone. When they finally reached civilization, every bit of footage they'd shot from the previous 2 days was gone. Hard drives blank, backup SD cards corrupted. Even the film reels that had been stored separately were completely wiped. The only surviving image was a still frame showing the rusted hatch, time-stamped at 2:47 a.m., a time when everyone had been asleep. A week later, the network officially announced a production pause due to severe weather conditions. But the crew members knew that was a lie. One of them tried to leak the story anonymously to a local newspaper, only to receive a cease and desist letter the next morning from a government attorney claiming unauthorized possession of restricted materials. Another crew member, the youngest cameraman, disappeared completely. His friends said he'd gone off-grid, but the trapper told a different story, that the boy had gone back up to the site alone, trying to find the missing tapes. He was never seen again. Months passed, and the Mountain Men cast quietly stopped talking about the incident. Interviews were canceled, promotional material pulled. One insider finally admitted that the entire Montana footage block had been erased from network archives. When pressed about why, he muttered one phrase before ending the call: "It wasn't supposed to be opened." Later that year, a leaked memo from the Department of the Interior circulated online, referencing a possible breach of containment in the Glacier Basin zone. The coordinates matched the filming location. It mentioned organic anomalies and unauthorized civilian interference. Within days, that memo vanished from every site that had posted it. Some fans called it a hoax. Others thought it was viral marketing. But the people who'd been there knew the truth. The show never filmed in that region again, and the area was quietly fenced off by the government. The official explanation? Ground instability due to methane exposure. Unofficially, every local hunter and rancher in a 50-mile radius swore the same thing. At night, you could still hear the low, rhythmic groaning under the snow. The network wanted silence, but the wilderness doesn't keep secrets forever, and soon, strange new sightings began appearing across the northern territories, footprints like the ones the crew had seen, clawed trees, and a hum that made compasses spin wildly. The Mountain Men's story was no longer about survival. It had become something else entirely. Weeks after the so-called containment operation, silence blanketed everything connected to Mountain Men. Then, out of nowhere, one of the original cast members, Tom Orr, surfaced in a late-night interview podcast hosted by an independent outdoorsman. The host expected a simple chat about wilderness life, but what Tom revealed instead sent chills down every listener's spine. His voice trembled as he described the night the crew left the mountains. He said he hadn't been at the main camp, but was staying several miles north, when he noticed flashes in the sky, bright, silent bursts that came from the exact direction of the excavation site. Moments later, the ground began to tremble. "It felt alive," he whispered, "like the earth was breathing." Tom said he tried to contact the team by radio, but all frequencies were dead. When he drove down to the base camp the next morning, everything was gone. Tents flattened, Snow churned up like a storm had hit only that spot. He found the trapper's old coat half buried near the hatch site and a broken lens cap from one of the production cameras. He reported it to the sheriff, but the next day, the sheriff told him to drop it or risk federal obstruction charges. That was when Tom realized it wasn't just about what they found, it was about what they unleashed. He claimed he later received an unmarked envelope in the mail containing 2 photos, one of the underground chamber, the other showing something crawling out of the broken tank. The second image was blurred, but the silhouette looked disturbingly human, tall, emaciated, and with long, jointed arms. Scrawled on the back were 3 words: "It's not over." The podcast episode was uploaded that same night, but was deleted within hours, replaced by a message claiming it violated national security policy. Yet fragments of the audio survived online, spreading across Reddit and YouTube before vanishing again. In the clip, Tom could be heard saying one last haunting line: "They buried it once, but we dug it up. Now it's moving again." Fans speculated that the "it" referred to a secret Cold War experiment, something the Army tested in remote areas decades ago, part of a rumored biological endurance project. Others believed Tom had gone insane from isolation. But days later, another former crew member backed him up anonymously, saying the smell that came from the hatch wasn't death, it was containment breaking. After that, Tom Orr disappeared from public view completely. His property was reportedly sold off quietly, and no one saw him again. Locals near his Montana cabin swore that strange lights began appearing in the woods where he once lived, glowing faintly before vanishing into the night fog. It was as if whatever had been found beneath the snow had followed him home. Months after Tom's disappearance, the Mountain Men shutdown had faded from headlines, but within online communities, whispers about the Montana tapes refused to die. Then, one evening, an anonymous YouTube channel called Wilderness Truths 88 uploaded a 7-minute clip titled "The Real Reason Mountain Men Was Cancelled." The video began with shaky night vision footage of a snow-covered clearing, the same location fans recognized from Season 12. The timestamp matched the week the show supposedly paused production. The camera panned slowly toward the hatch site, which was now surrounded by makeshift floodlights. A crew member's voice could be heard whispering, "It's breathing again." The lens zoomed in, and sure enough, the snow over the hatch rose and fell, almost rhythmically. Then the audio distorted. A low, mechanical hum drowned out the voices. For a brief moment, a hand, human but unnaturally pale and elongated, pressed against the hatch from underneath, leaving streaks of dark fluid on the surface before vanishing. Seconds later, the camera jerked violently, and the view cut to black. The clip ended with muffled screams and the faint sound of metal twisting. Within 2 hours, the upload hit 100,000 views before disappearing completely. Channels that re-uploaded it found their videos instantly demonetized or removed for graphic content. Some users who saved the file claimed the metadata showed a GPS tag pointing not to Montana, but to an undisclosed data center in Virginia. That was when rumors began to circulate that the footage had been intercepted and archived by federal authorities before ever reaching the public. Reddit threads filled with screenshots of the pale hand and speculation that the show's production crew had stumbled upon remnants of a classified bioengineering project. Others claimed it was all an elaborate hoax by the network to boost ratings, but the network never issued a statement. In fact, within weeks, all official Mountain Men pages went dark. Even the History Channel quietly scrubbed its social media of any references to the Montana season. One insider leaked that the network received direct instructions from an unnamed agency to suspend all wilderness shoots in certain northern territories until further notice. The phrase, "until further notice," appeared again later in a leaked corporate memo, followed by a chilling warning. Any rebroadcast of restricted footage will trigger legal action under Federal Directive 12-931. Whatever was under that hatch, someone powerful wanted it forgotten. Yet the wilderness had other plans. Park rangers began reporting strange sightings, deer carcasses torn open in impossible ways, trees shredded from the inside out, and a low hum echoing through the valleys during cold nights. A local hunter swore he saw something crawling on all fours near the old filming site, something that moved like a man, but wasn't one. And then, weeks later, a final message appeared on the Wilderness Truth's 88 channel. Before it, too, vanished. A single frame of snowy darkness, a voice whispering through static, "It's awake." The shutdown of mountain men became one of the most quietly handled controversies in television history. No formal explanation was ever given, no footage ever resurfaced, and yet, whispers continued. Former crew members vanished from social media, NDAS were reinforced, and a few who dared to speak publicly soon recanted their stories or disappeared entirely. One of the field producers, speaking under a false name on a conspiracy forum, claimed that the network received compensation well above any cancellation fee, and that part of that deal included a perpetual non-disclosure clause involving federal cooperation. Fans who analyzed the leaked 7-minute footage frame by frame began noticing details that hadn't been discussed publicly. A military-style sensor array hidden in the background, and in one freeze frame, a shadow behind the hatch that wasn't there in the previous seconds. The silhouette appeared to be standing upright, watching. Online claiming the Montana incident was linked to an abandoned Cold War research site, codenamed Project Black Frost. According to declassified fragments from the 1960s, the government had been testing biological adaptability in extreme cold, trying to create soldiers who could survive in sub-zero environments without shelter. But something went wrong. The subjects began to mutate uncontrollably, developing regenerative tissue that wouldn't die, even when frozen solid. The project was buried, literally, beneath the mountains, and forgotten. Until the Mountain Men crew broke it open again. The cover-up went into overdrive. The U.S. Geological Survey declared the area off-limits due to sinkhole instability, and satellite imagery of the region was blurred on multiple mapping services. Hunters who wandered too close were reportedly arrested for trespassing by energy safety officers, a title no one had ever heard of. Then came the fires. In early spring, Forest Service teams began controlled burns in the region, claiming it was to prevent wildfires. But eyewitnesses swore they saw military trucks hauling sealed containers out of the area before the fires began. Whatever was in those tanks, they weren't taking chances on leaving it behind. Years later, a retired National Guard pilot admitted off-record that his unit had been tasked with aerial quarantine operations in Montana in early 2023. When asked what they were quarantining, he only said it wasn't human anymore. By now, the Mountain Men brand had been completely sanitized, reruns re-edited, certain episodes removed, and all marketing tied to the Montana shoot permanently deleted. But nature doesn't forget, and neither do those who lived it. In late 2024, hikers in Alberta reported finding an old Mountain Men camera lodged in the ice along a glacial stream. When the footage was recovered, it showed a half-buried metallic structure in the snow, identical to the hatch from the Montana site. The final seconds captured a faint sound in the background, low and rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. The video ended with the lens turning toward the sky, showing a strange green light flickering through the clouds. Investigators couldn't trace who uploaded it, but the coordinates embedded in the file pointed far north, hundreds of miles from where the original incident took place. Whatever had been unearthed beneath that mountain, it had moved. The wilderness may hide its secrets well, but some things are too big, too ancient, too alive to stay buried forever. And as one anonymous email sent to a fan forum ominously stated before being deleted, they never shut it down. They just followed it deeper.